Would you pray with me? God, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of all our hearts be acceptable in your sight, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. What day is it? Have you asked someone or maybe yourself that question lately? Have you been wrong? I know I have. And I know I'm not alone. On Friday, I saw on Facebook that a teacher friend of mine missed a mandatory Zoom meeting, she said, because she was just sure that it was Thursday all day long. And what time is it? Have you had trouble sleeping lately, or maybe find yourself getting up much later than normal? Have you realized it was time to eat hours after you normally would have had breakfast, lunch, or dinner? Yep, been there, done that. Here in our house, and maybe in yours too, almost everything on our calendars has been postponed or canceled, from eye exams and dental cleanings to highly anticipated events like 6th grade camp or a spring break cruise with friends. In fact, that's where I should be right now, on a cruise ship. But I'm not. And as disappointing or frustrating as it is to lose our carefully scheduled plans, it's even harder because there's no clarity about when we might reschedule. Next month? Next year? In the days since the COVID-19 pandemic began, and especially in the last several days under shelter in place, time just seems to pass differently. I was thinking about time this week when I came across the very first sermon I ever preached at Pioneer Ocean View back in January of 2012. The scriptures we're using today were the New Testament lectionary readings from that Sunday, and both of them reference time, about time being fulfilled or running short. In Mark, Jesus says as he begins his ministry in Galilee, the time is fulfilled, or as one modern translation puts it, time's up. He then calls an unlikely group of fishermen to drop what they're doing and follow him, which, amazingly, they do. In the reading from 1 Corinthians, Paul is writing to the young church at Corinth and cautions them that time has grown short, urging them to set aside worldly attachments and focus on Christ's return, because the present form of this world is passing away. Now, some have read these words and concluded that these statements about time running out or being short are referring to the end of the world. And in fact, we know that's how the early church understood things. After his resurrection, Jesus promised that he would return. And those first believers expected it would be soon, in their lifetimes. They had, as I've shared with you before, an apocalyptic eschatological expectation, which is just a fancy theological way of saying that the early Christians thought Jesus was coming back soon, and that when he did, the world would end. As we read the New Testament, we see that the lives of the believers were shaped by that expectation. They created rules and guidelines for what it meant to live as faithful people anxiously awaiting Christ's return. We see it in Corinth, where members of the Christian community are arguing over how to live in that time of waiting, including asking whether or not they should marry. Paul tries to mediate the conflict by reminding them that time is short. The present form of this world is passing away, he told them. So married or unmarried, rich or poor, grieving or rejoicing, They should let go of any attachments to the current world, relationships, possessions, work, and prepare for the new world that was coming. In Greek, the language of the New Testament, there are two words that we read as time in English, but that have very different meanings in Greek. Chronos, the root of English words like chronic and chronology, signifies what we usually mean when we say time. It refers to that measured linear concept of minutes, hours, and days, the time of the clock and the calendar. But there's another word for time, kairos, that means something more like the right moment, when something special happens. Kairos is unpredictable and unmeasurable, a time of the heart and the spirit. Kairos may be a second or a season, but when it happens, it brings with it the possibility for change, transformation, and renewal. The early church was deeply shaped by the sense that Chronos time was soon coming to an end. And we can understand how that sense of urgency would have changed them. But some 2,000 years later, Christians don't live with that same sense of urgency about the end of time. We plan for the future. We invest in college funds and 401ks. We get married, we have children, we take out 30-year mortgages. For the most part, our days and weeks move with the sequential progression of Chronos. Tick, tock, tick, tock, tick, tock. But all of a sudden, the global coronavirus pandemic has totally disrupted Chronos time. Businesses and schools are closed. We're advised to stay home except to venture out for necessities. In this new normal, we are without the comfort and routine of Chronos time. Wake up, eat breakfast, go to work, go to school, come home, make dinner, wash the dishes, go to bed, and do it all over again. Without our calendars and schedules now to guide us, Chronos time just feels weird. Which makes me wonder, might this be a Kairos moment? Kairos moments are moments of possibility and opportunity, moments in which we break free of Chronos time and open ourselves to new ways of seeing and hearing and living and being. Walking on the beach that day, Jesus encountered 4 people in the mundane world of Chronos, doing what they did every day, fishing, mending their nets, hauling in a catch. And what he said to them wasn't so much that time was running short, not Chronos. He said something more like, the right moment is here. God's realm is breaking into your lives right now. Simon and Andrew and James and John just showed up faithfully for work that day, doing what they knew to do. They hadn't done anything special to prepare. They hadn't come there that day expecting their lives to be changed forever. But in ways that they did not perceive, God had been with them, preparing them for the right moment. And when it arrived, when Jesus called to them and said, "Follow me," they knew what to do. So I wonder, how might God's realm be breaking into our lives in this uncertain time? What invitations to follow Christ in new ways might this disruption of Chronos offer us? How might we find ways to deepen our faith? Some of us suddenly have more time in which we might pray, or read the Bible, or journal. For those of us who are fortunate enough to remain healthy, how might we find ways to share God's love with a neighbor or even a stranger? Children have been decorating sidewalks with brightly chalked messages of hope and encouragement. Younger adults have been offering to run errands for senior adults who've been advised to stay home. Churches have been finding new ways to connect and worship. Artists have been sharing their gifts in new ways. Those who have enough have been sharing freely with those who are in need. In the midst of all that we're feeling these days, all the loss and grief and fear and disorientation, how might we listen for Jesus' voice, inviting us to follow him out of the daily lives that we've known and into lives of deeper faith and trust and love? So much of what we are used to is gone, and we don't know what life looks like on the other side of this. This is, as Richard Rohr calls it, liminal time. It's when you've left or about to leave the tried and true, but have not yet been able to replace it with anything else. It's when you are between your old comfort zone and any possible new answer. There is definitely loss and grief and anxiety during this liminal time when Chronos seems broken. But there is also possibility, an opportunity for us to live our faith in new ways. In this Kairos moment, O God, may we, in the words of a familiar song, see thee more clearly, love thee more dearly, and follow thee more nearly, day by day. Amen.